Go slide to the week and preach Thanksgiving at Devin crib, but sub is what do you eat? Niggas been lame. Can I get a lean ass nigga? You ain't a fan of the pot or green ass nigga? Random X, a podcast. I say random X, a podcast. It's the best damn podcast. Niggas start sleeping. If a nigga disagree, pussy boy stop breathing. Random X, a podcast. I say random X, a podcast. It's the best damn podcast. Niggas start sleeping. If a nigga disagree, pussy boy stop breathing. Oh, you want them suits like Johan. Oh no, you want them little hair tubbing braids like Ampan. Oh, you trying to get you a little stud like Devin had. Young nigga from that north side, I never been capping. Duval nigga, I'm never ducking that action. I pull up in that whip, niggas know what I be blasting. Random ass podcast, them fuck niggas be snapping. I don't know if it's me, but I'm the realest nigga of the week. Disagree, they gon' have to come and get their ass beat. Bare beneath, put that boy 6 feet deep. I had Joe zip him up when they say that nigga deceased and pay Deacon Ample Rat to go slide to the wake and preach Thanksgiving at Devin crib, but sub is what do you eat? Niggas been lame. Can I get a lean ass nigga? You ain't a fan of the pot or green ass nigga? Random X, a podcast. I say random X, a podcast. It's the best damn podcast. Niggas start sleeping. If a nigga disagree, pussy boy stop breathing. Random X, a podcast. I say random X, a podcast. It's the best damn podcast. Niggas start sleeping. If a nigga disagree, pussy boy stop breathing. Oh, you want them suits like Johan. Oh no, you want them little hair tubbing braids like Ampan. Oh, you trying to get you a little stud like Devin had. Young nigga from that north side, I never been capping. Duval nigga, I'm never ducking that action.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Another episode of Friday's History Lesson. Y'all know who it is. It is your boy Wi-Fi by the plug here at RAOP Studios. Today, ladies and gentlemen, today we are studying African history. I hope you got your pen and pad ready. We're gonna drop some gems that you might not have known about. I felt like this introduction was only fitting. So we're gonna let it ride. One time for coming to America. Not just a hell of a comedy movie, but a great way to pique some interest into African culture, especially for its time. But today, though, it is a great introduction to Friday's History Lesson, ladies and gentlemen. I am excited as hell. After a week away, I was out of town, had to take care of the grandparents. I am back. We are back with another Friday history lesson, and we are diving into Egypt. We are diving into African history today. All right, let's get it. When y'all think of Egypt, what do you think of? Let's start geographically. Desert, clay, copper. What are some of the things that you think about geographically when you talk about Egypt? Of course, I mean, one of the biggest things, the Nile River, right? After that, you start thinking about the kings and queens, right? The kings and queens of Egypt history. Let's start by going into a good old Google search. I'm gonna take y'all on this journey with me. How long did the ancient Egyptian civilization last? Approximately 3,000 years. Now, I'm sure we all know a little something about pyramids. One of the interesting things that I found out about pyramids was that the inception of it, like there are pyramids that predate Egyptian civilization, like period. You know what I'm saying? Like I that's not something that we casually talk about. We're gonna get into today. I'm gonna give y'all a brief synopsis of some of what we're gonna go over. We are gonna get into this much of the pyramids. This much. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about some of the big ones and just their importance. But we're gonna start with the first pharaoh, Narmer, and we're gonna work all the way through the fall of Egypt with Cleopatra. We're gonna talk about the old kingdom, middle, and the new kingdom. And we're gonna get into some of the pharaohs. All right. So I think I led with that, but y'all are with me. When we talk about, I mean, when we start with Egypt, let's start geographically. Interestingly enough, Egypt was separated. So the pre-dynastic period. We're only focusing today on the dynastic period, as far as Egypt goes. So, like I say, in the pre-dynastic period, there were pyramids that were being constructed. They just weren't the pyramids that we think of today. They had a different structure, right? So Egypt was separated by the Nile River, but it was separated into the Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. You hear a little bit about it, but that's important because it's going to come up several times, not just throughout our lesson today, but throughout history of Egypt. Why there's that separation. The Nile River itself flows in reverse. So the upper region, let's pull up, let's see, ancient, I can't type, Egypt map. All right, so we're going to start here. I mean, you could look at any of these, but I didn't want to go to the website. Oh, well. All right, so Nile River flows from the south to the north. This is your lower Egypt, upper Egypt. Upper Egypt, and I'm going to verify this in just a second, but if I'm not mistaken, just shoot from the hip off memory. Upper Egypt was defined by a white crown during this time. Lower Egypt was defined by a red crown. Let me check my notes. Yeah, okay, I said it backwards. Upper Egypt was a red crown and Lower Egypt was a white crown. All right. So why that's important, that was used, of course, obviously to separate and to show their rulership, right? That's probably not a word, but when Narmer went to Upper Egypt, I want to say, and let's pull him up. Narmer is the first pharaoh who united Egypt. This is where essentially Egypt's dynastic period begins, right? This is the first dynasty. He was also named Menes, or translated to menace. Think about how cold of a motherfucker you gotta be for your name to be Menace, right? Like I say, I think in the first history lesson, I asked, how do you rise to power? Is it conquership? Twitching B, appreciate you tapping in, man. Appreciate you tapping in. I asked in the first history lesson, how do you rise to power throughout these historical civilizations, right? And we studied in, I want to say it was Japan, that their history stretches 10,000 years to the same family, if I'm not mistaken, right? Here is not the case. Narmer tapped in. I mean, Narmer conquered. I want to make sure that I am historically correct. Let's just say this. He united Egypt. And how we know this is through these palettes. And there's this mace head, right? These artifacts, the stories depicted. So in Narmer, here, if I'm not mistaken, this was to show lower Egypt, right? He was wearing a white crown at the time, and Upper Egypt had this. If you can follow my mouse, my cursor, this was the distinction in their crown, right? Later on in this mace head, it shows him for the first time wearing both together. So, as far as how they depicted it, this was Narmer uniting Egypt. This represented some crazy numbers. I want to say it was like 1 million cattle, hundreds of thousands of goats. Twitching asked, have you talked about, I want to say that's Mallet, where the Kemetic principles began? No, we haven't. I'm not sure that we're going to get into that today, but that's a great question, and we shall definitely look into that. Let me make a note of that, because we're going to circle back to this topic. And if y'all got any criticisms, anything like that, tap in for sure. Let me know in the comments. If y'all feel like I need to be more specific on some of the points, let me know, because I'm gonna do my best to make it not to say quick, but we're gonna get through this stream in it's gonna be a great stream. Let's say that. I'm super excited about this. So again, going back to these, another thing that was that really stood out, I guess, to everyone, right, is how they depicted him coming to power. This is supposed to represent him marching on. Again, I'm gonna say he was from Lower Egypt and came to Upper Egypt. I could be mistaken. It could be just vice versa, right? But in his rise to power, he had to march against his enemies at the time, And this depiction here is his enemies with their head cut off and placed between their legs. Very, very telling, depiction, right? It wasn't an easy rise to power. Sky Beats from South Africa, appreciate you tapping in. Hey, you might know a little bit about this, a little more about this. So, again, chime in if you got anything. Earl, the first subject in school I fell in love with, history. Let's get it, man. Friday's history lesson. Like I said in the first history lesson, I never took a history class after like middle school. So everything that I learned, I had to go out and just search for, right? And that's what we're gonna do throughout these streams every Friday. I'm gonna just try and find a different topic. I'll do my search, and then we're gonna talk about it collectively in the chat and learn all of this together. So Narmer starts the dynastic period in Egypt, 3100 BC. And like I say, this lasted for 3,000 years, right? During Narmer's period, it was said that he was actually a really good ruler. Egypt began thriving. One of the reasons why I mentioned the geographical state of Egypt, especially during that time, was because today, when you think about it, all we think about is the desert. And during that time, it had more grassy lands, right? It had agriculture. I'm not sure if I should save this for later or what, but one of the interesting things about their culture that in a lot of ways became innovation for society was they were able to, let me see if I can silence my phone. I got it connected to the board so that we can there we go. I thought I did that already. They were able to tell pregnancy and the sex of the baby by having the woman pee on barley and wheat. If it grew barley, it was a boy. If it grew wheat, it was a woman. Interesting, right? And this is 3100 BC. So during that time, they were able to, like I say, thrive off of agriculture because of the land being fertile, more fertile, right? And they traded in a lot of salts. Some things that I found out about Egypt was they got paid in salt at times. They got paid in bread. Bread became one of their biggest exports. The crazy thing about their bread, right, is such a huge innovation at this time. You have something that's so sustainable that you're able to eat, you can feed your family, you can survive on bread, right? But the bread that they were making contained like iron, copper, ash, dust, everything that was just, you know what I mean, of the circumstance. So it was chipping their teeth, it was causing abscesses, all kinds of stuff. So some of the skulls that you see that are missing teeth, or that was from just what they were eating. And there was no separation in class in that regard, to where you're not eating better if you're a king. You still suffered the same fate, essentially. So Narmer made his capital, the capital of Egypt, Memphis. And that's why we got Memphis here, Little Africa. Chloe, appreciate you tapping in. Glasses 42, appreciate you tapping in. Yeah, so Narmer made his capital in Memphis, which is today Cairo in Lower Egypt, right? So like I said, he did go from Lower Egypt to conquering Upper Egypt. I was right in that regard. From there, let's just say the next important pharaoh, because I don't want. If I'm not mistaken, there's nothing outside of him conquering and ruling peacefully. These are the biggest artifacts that stand out during that period because it does tell the tale. Um, there are things about his tomb that if you would like, we can get into, but I'll circle back, right? Because the next pharaoh that I had as a notable figure is uh Djoser. And he is famous for this step pyramid, right? And it is, I forget what it was called initially. Um, and again, y'all know I don't want to mess up any of the verbiage. Sakar, yeah. In the center of the large mortuary complex in the Sakar necropolis. So this was his contribution to Egyptian history. It was the pyramid that we've come to know and love today. Before this, they were made more of just clay bricks that were compiled together. And though in this narrowed shape, think more trapezoid at the top, because they didn't have it, essentially they didn't have it perfected. Now, to do this, Djoser enlisted Imhotep, and he's the first architect. He's the architect of the first pyramid. I find that to be interesting because, giving credit, like, he didn't have to, as the pharaoh, the king, and I don't know if that was his choice or if that was something that it was just such widespread word throughout that, hey, you decide you got to run with it. All right, so Imhotep, the name means the one who comes in peace. When you see people saying they Hotep, I can respect that part. There are certain things, you know what I mean, about them niggas that, hey man, carry on. But I respect it. I respect the root inspiration here for sure. An Egyptian chancellor to the king Djoser, possible architect. Well, I'm gonna say he was the architect of Djoser's step pyramid and the high priest. Now, here, this is where what they say, art and life start to blend. Ancient Egypt's history also includes their mythology in a lot of ways. So it says the high priest of the sun god Ra at Heliopolis. And they were such a religious people. Now, they were such religious people that everything ruled their life. One of the queens that rose to power got there by saying her mother was visited by one of the gods, and that's what made her divine for the role, right? Now we're still in the Old Kingdom. This is the third dynasty at this point with Djoser. Now during this time, their reign was, let's just say, pretty average for like what you would expect of a lifespan. So 27 years, some might have been 50 years, 60 years. There's a point that we're gonna find of almost a century long in Egypt's history to where none of the pharaohs lasted more than 5 years. So next we're gonna go into Sneferu. He's of the fourth dynasty, immediately following Djoser. He was arguably the most important for, if I'm not mistaken, perfecting the pyramid. And three of his pyramids, if I'm not mistaken, three of his pyramids still stand. So, you know, some were knocked down, some were just damaged, right? So badly over time, but his are I would imagine still pretty pristine today. If I'm not mistaken, it's Neferu. And these pharaohs and kings in ancient history are most notable for their architectural and artistic contributions to the cities, to the nation itself. So again, we're still in the Old Kingdom. Sneferu, fourth dynasty. His son, Khufu, built the largest pyramid. The Pyramid of Giza. So if y'all are familiar with that, this is your fifth dynasty king of Egypt, or pharaoh. Khufu, the son of Sneferu. Sneferu, if I'm not mistaken, yes. So Sneferu had a dynasty family where I want to say about 4 generations were able to hold the leadership of Egypt, let's say. First king of the fourth dynasty. Yeah, so the big thing with Sneferu, he a lot of obstructions, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of art, a lot of libraries. Think of it like that. Most notably, like I say, the construction of the 3 pyramids, the collapsed pyramid at Medum, the bent pyramid, and the pyramid at Deshur. Now, the bent pyramid, up at the top, where it would have come to a point, there was too much weight. And if I'm not mistaken, it kind of collapsed in. So what they did was, or they were afraid that that might happen, one of the two. But what they did was they changed the angle, and that's how it became the bent pyramid. Just at the top, they changed the angle, and we can, you know, like I say, get into the Googles with that. Now, it's saying that this was the first change from the step-sided pyramids that Djoser had Imhotep architected and Djoser was known for, to smooth-sided pyramids. But it suggested that due to the steepness of the original angle of inclination, the structure may have begun to show signs of instability during construction, forcing the builders to adopt a shallower angle to avert the structure's collapse. Yeah, so they were able to catch it beforehand, but again, because of it, and this is incredible to think about. You doing this with essentially a string and a weight at the bottom of the string to tell if you have a straight edge. You know, your tools are copper, et cetera, right? One thing I think that is important to mention during all of this is that during all of this history, there was still turmoil between Upper and Lower Egypt. Though they united as nations, they didn't always see as one nation, right? They didn't always agree. And some of that wasn't due to the kings, it was due more so to circumstance. Twitchin said it's all psyche based. They taught everybody math. They did. I mean, and I want to say that psychics. Okay, or physics rather. Don't cook me. Physics, but I'm reading against this white backdrop, so it's a little tough to see the white text on the screen too, y'all. To my defense, but yeah, nah. And I'm saying that to say your math. What's today's mathematics? What's today's mathematics? We might need to get back to Egypt's mathematics so we can get our shit on track. Now, again, some of the turmoil wasn't due to the kings. It wasn't due to how they were being treated as much as it was to circumstance. Djoser, just going back to the third dynasty, right? And we're still Old Kingdom. This is their first rule as one nation. During Djoser's reign, he faced a 7-year famine. Now, the thing about the Nile River during that time, like I mentioned, there was more shrubbery. There was more grass, more trees, and then you had more agriculture because of that, right? But it was a lot based on the Nile River. And the thing about the Nile River was it would dry up, it would overflow. So it's very unpredictable, right? A place like Fayoum, let's look at their ancient history. Is known for their farming, right? During ancient history. Fayoum was a fertile oasis in ancient Egypt, known for early agriculture and its importance during Middle Kingdom under Amenemhat and Amenemhat III, who eh, developed its irrigation and created Lake Morris. So, dating back to pre-dynastic period, B Dot is ignorant. B Dot said Cleopatra probably had the real Nile River. Yeah, I believe that, and we're gonna get into that. Cleopatra's story is super interesting, and that's why some of this I am kind of breezing over, but I feel like I'm giving y'all some good tidbits. Right, this is all Old Kingdom. So this dynasty lasts from, I want to say, 1 to 10, right? Then we get to the Middle Kingdom. I mean, not the dynasty, but that kingdom. That kingdom lasted 10 dynasties. In the 11th dynasty, it was Menuhotep. Now, I'm gonna be honest. This is in no way disrespect, but I mean, why do I keep doing that? I don't know how to fuck the spell. Is that who I'm looking for? Is that who I'm looking for? No. I know what to do. All right, so 11th dynasty starts the the Middle Kingdom, right? Menuhotep. Mentuhotep the second. And I don't know how to pronounce his real name or his alias, so we're not gonna get into that. But he was known as the Lord of the Rudder is Ra. So I don't know what that means. The sixth ruler under the 11th dynasty, he is credited. All right, so at the end of the Old Kingdom, at the end of at the conclusion of the 10th dynasty, Egypt splits in two again. Like I say, there's turmoil. Yeah, B Dot, you made a great point. Internet definitely killed the true meaning of Hotep, because throughout Egypt's history, this would be like, let's just say, a Williams, a Johnson. Pause. That sounded crazy. If it would be one of those surnames that's so common, you could, I don't want to say take pride in it, right? But in this time, it would be one of great honor, you know. But if everybody's you know what I'm saying, a Hotep, then, because according to they were named according to their religion, right? So, like I say, at the 10th dynasty, turmoil again, Upper and Lower Egypt split. They say, hey, we done. During this time, y'all got to keep in mind, they are still fighting and facing other nations or other cities, other groups of foreign entities, right? And some of that is because during certain kings' leadership, they wanted to expand. When they weakened or when they died, they, you know, you got to fight to keep the land or lose it, you know. So again, some of this was just circumstantial things, right? So Menuhotep, this is the spark of our 11th dynasty, right? And he's notable just for, again, the big thing was reuniting Egypt during that time to one nation. Um, the Middle Kingdom is important to note that it only lasted 3 dynasties. It began 2200 BCE, and let me see. I mean, the Middle Kingdom, rather. The Middle Kingdom only lasted 3 dynasties. We're gonna look up the pharaohs during this time, but again, you know, you think about that. It started. I don't know if this is correct, but we on Wikipedia. You know, folks being here editing and shit. It says here in Wikipedia though, 2055 BC to 1650 BC. Now, why I mentioned Memphis earlier as the capital under Narmer, I want to say by the time we get to Sneferu, who was in the 4th dynasty, the capital of Egypt was moved. Some of the places that it was moved to as a capital were Thebes, Memphis, which is now Cairo, you know, today. There's one more that I wanted to mention because it served a brief stint elsewhere, but I can't think of it. Now, during the Middle Kingdom, again, three. Okay, Twitching said the 11th dynasty lasted 2134 to 1991 BCE. Yeah, like I say, you got to take Wikipedia with a grain of salt sometimes. Some motherfuckers just get bored and say, I'm gonna rewrite history. Speaking of which, let's get into to Egypt rewriting their own history. Yep. Pharaoh Menhotep the second was part of it. You talking about rewriting history or the Middle Kingdom? But that was a thing for the kings or for pharaohs to do. If they wanted to be greater, they would knock down pre-built structures and erect new structures honoring themselves. Ramses II is known for that. Switching said he was one of the members of the 11th dynasty. Yep. So the Middle Kingdom, and it lasted only 3 dynasties for the Middle Kingdom, and then we'll get into the New Kingdom in just a minute. The New Kingdom is what we know most of the pharaohs for. I don't know how, but I just lost my train of thought for a second as to what I was just saying. Oh, Ramses II and his propaganda. You know how they say fake news? This was a thing in Egyptian history. There were several, just giving you 3 examples of fake news. And I mean, of course, when you control the media, we've known this throughout all of history. It's been like used to as a tool to lead the masses, right? But in this regard, let's look at some of these circumstances. There was one king, and I want to say it's one of the ones that we just mentioned. I just don't want to label anyone wrong. There was one king that, in trying to unite the nations or fighting off their foe, there was a huge stalemate. No one wins. No one wins. But they come home and they say, yo, we did it. We won, y'all. Everyone eats it up. He's an amazing pharaoh. Speaking of Cleopatra, she was fucking Mark Antony. Mark Antony lost to, I want to say, Greece. And in doing so, kind of tucked his tail. We're going to get into that in a minute, into the new kingdom. But to try and keep him of status, Cleopatra was telling people that he won the battle. Twitch said he was a punk as well. I believe that. They was doing some crazy things during that time. Crazy things during that time. In the New Kingdom, Cleopatra's story is fucking insane. All right. What else do I got for the Middle Kingdom? So there was a big battle, and I don't want to give you all the wrong information, but it's like the 4.2 kilo year event. Yep, there we go. I just wasn't sure if it was spelt kilo, but I didn't get a chance to look all the way into this, right? So the 4.2 kilo year event, also known as the 4.2 Ka event, was one of the most severe climatic events of the Holocene epoch. It defines the beginning of the current Meghalian age of the Holocene epoch. Starting around 2200 BC, it most likely lasted the entire 22nd century BC. It has been hypothesized to have caused the collapse of the Old Kingdom in Egypt, the Akkadian Empire, the Mesopotamia, and the Ling Zhao culture. In my doing this, I'm gonna start to try and learn some different languages so I can pronounce these words better. I would like to be more articulate in that regard, especially as I'm doing these history lessons. Dr. Octo, what's good, man? Definitely appreciate you tapping in. I'm gonna be honest, man. I literally just got back into town, and as soon as I could, I made it here to the studio and said, "Boot me up." I was excited as hell to get into this. Right now, we're in the Middle Ages. I mean, the Middle Kingdom, the Middle Ages. We ain't talking about that right now. We in the Middle Kingdom for the ancient Egypt history. Now, during this time, right? Okay, Twitching says start with Hebrew. It's extremely tough, but once you can speak that, you can damn near learn any language. Hey, that's a good look. That's a good look. I bet. I got my homework, y'all. I might do a stream just trying to learn Hebrew. All right, so it's important to mention that during this time, right? I mentioned that these kings were not always at fault as to why they had bad reputations, why they might have been overthrown, as to why people might have hated them. Some of them were pure fucking assholes, making it to where the religious class lived better than your common people, making it to where when crops are low and they're in a famine, the rich stay rich. You know what I mean? But during this time, rather, right, the end of the old kingdom and into the middle kingdom, there's no building going on. I also mentioned that the kings became notable because of their architectural and artistic additions to the city and to ancient Egypt history, right? So there's no building going on. That resumes in the 12th dynasty for ancient Egypt. My goal with all of this is to give you enough to pique an interest, and then you do due diligence, go and find the actual information, man. Go and study everything for yourself. But I've done a lot just to be able to kind of skim through history in this time with a few good notable facts, right? So, Middle Kingdom ending, when did we say? Around the 1700s, right? 1700 BCE, let's just say. The kingdom split up again. Now, during this time, that's the end of the 14th dynasty, right? At the end of the 14th dynasty, the kingdom split up. So that becomes the end of the Middle Kingdom. We now again have Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. However, at this time, war ensues, and they're taken over by an Eastern Asian group called the Hyksos, and they ruled for the 15th dynasty. Dot said Pastor Pop studied Hebrew to understand the word more, and also he said a lot of people faking speaking in tongue. Oh, I believe that wholeheartedly. We're gonna have to get Pops on an episode one day, Dot. I know you got some stories for days, man. Now, we don't talk about Egypt being ruled by anyone other than African people, right? The kings and queens being matter of fact, I gotta give a huge shout out to Dr. Octa, man. Dr. Octa actually made me want to like do a super big deep dive into this. Real quick, I'm gonna read the chat. Twitcher said Dot is right. Also, there's no J in Hebrew language, so how do you call Christ Jesus, right? Yahweh. Come on. Dot said crazy amount of You're not wrong, Doc. You're not wrong. So last week he put me on the game about Greeks rule over Egypt, and it made me like, super interested into how that came to be, how long it lasted, et cetera, right? So that's gonna bring us into the New Kingdom. Now, like I say, the 15th dynasty is going on. They're being ran by the Hyksos. This is Yeshua. There you go. Um uh the 15th dynasty, this is no kingdom right now. They not even marking this as our history. This is just forced upon it, right? But it's a dynasty, right? 15th dynasty is the Hyksos. There was a pharaoh by the name of Amos that expelled the Hyksos, reunited Egypt, and established a new kingdom on Thebes. And again, this is how you carve your name in stone, right? Obviously, you unite two nations. Shit. Imagine if Donald Trump were to take over Canada, they would be calling him a pharaoh. They would be trying to crown that man. You get what I'm saying? You conquer two nations. I kind of gotta salute you. But it's fucked up how niggas did it. Some of the depictions of how, like I say, how they came to power were like cutting off the hand. It was a drawing of the hand being cut off and held and served, to the king, right? And it was to say how many warriors did you injure, did you kill, as an honor to me, right? But you gotta do what you gotta do when you trying to rise to power. So let's look up Amos. I want to say this is how you Amos. There you go. All right. Now he takes over in the 18th dynasty, according to Wikipedia. We could get into some of this, but again, most of this is just politics, right? As to why they were good kings. The bad kings might. Some of them were just fucked up people. Like I say, keeping the class system so you couldn't thrive, right? And then there were kings that leveled the class systems in a way to where even the lowest were able to have luxuries, right? Experience delicacies. During that time, lettuce was an aphrodisiac. So I say that just to say you can see how strict their diet might have been, right? Salt being heavily used, bread being one of their best exports and ways of life. Period. So I say it to say, almost most notable for reuniting the kingdoms, continuing the ancient Egyptian reign and rule over Egypt, right? And when we say that, we're talking about nations that are up and down that Nile River. All right. So after Amos, like I say, the at that point, where's Thebes on here? We don't got Thebes on there. At this point, like I say, Memphis was our first capital. Now we're at Thebes. We're almost. All right. The New Kingdom, like I say, it's known as the greatest of the three because of the most notable pharaohs. Everyone that you know off the top of your head, if you had to say King Tut, it's gonna be New Kingdom. The New Kingdom ended 1100 BCE, if my notes are correct. Now, after the New Kingdom, actually, while we're in the New Kingdom, let's get into some of these. I got another interesting fact for you all. There were 5 pharaohs that were mentioned in the Bible. I'm probably gonna mess up these names, but we got Shawshak, So, or Osorkon, Teraka, Necho II, and Hafra. Those were actual pharaohs that history has proven, right, existed, that were mentioned and listed in the Bible. That's one of our tidbits. Now let's get into some of the queens of ancient Egypt, right? When we think about the queen, everyone thinks Cleopatra. And then you think Nefertiti because of the beauty, right? Let's go to. Hey, and real quick, I saw some pictures. They say that the way that the coin was depicted at that time was to best represent Cleopatra. She was not a looker. Cleopatra looked like a. I'm gonna pull it up. Yeah, I don't believe me. She looked like one of them Disney character witches. Now, I don't know if this is people hating. You get what I'm saying? Because, like I say, they did a lot of funny shit with history. There are writings that people have said that Cleopatra was so beautiful, they couldn't believe it, right? Couldn't believe their eyes. And there was some that was like, yo, it wasn't like I couldn't move or nothing. I wasn't that impressed. She was all right. But all right, let's get back to Hatshepsut. Now, she is notable, if I'm not mistaken, 18th dynasty. Yeah, 18th dynasty. All right, so she was most notable, right? Because she operated as a king more so. Doctor said the Egyptians now have blacks. It's wild how damn I missed that one. Mark Antony and Caesar was both busting in her. Yes, they were, and we're gonna get into that next. Um, Hatshepsut operated actually as a king, or was at least respected as a king. Um, that said, she looked better than Elizabeth Taylor. That's funny. um, they so she was operating, or at least, like I say, respected as a king during her run. But her run, again, interesting. Marries into the family. She was the daughter of Thutmose the First and the great royal wife of Amos. Okay, so maybe not. Okay, it wasn't that she married into the family. They got some weird incestual things going on. But upon the death of her brother, her husband and her half brother, Thutmose II, she intended to rule. Like, she was supposed to be just regent, or she was acting as a regent, really, because her son, Thutmose III, who eventually came to heir after her death, he was too young to lead. So she ran the show. When he became of age, which at that time it was customary for a king who was too young to lead to step into his roles and his duties, his responsibilities around 14, 15. Let's just say at the late end, 16 years old, you know what I mean? You're the king of Egypt. You know what I'm saying? While she was reigning, she said, nah. Nah. Here it says she assumed the position of pharaoh and adopted the full royal titulary, making her a co-ruler alongside Thutmose III. She pretty much ran the show. Now, Thutmose III became sole heir, sole king of the nation once she died. And then again, this is another dynasty family to where after her and before her, it was her husband, I want to say. After her is her son. After that, his son, Amenhotep II. B dot, I completely agree, actually. Amenhotep, seventh pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, inherited a vast kingdom from his father. What was he known for? I forget. I want to say it was his military. I know Thutmose was military. His mother, Hatshepsut, you know the name, Hatshepsut, was trade and more diplomatic. That's what she was known for. let's get into Cleopatra. Y'all love y'all. I mean, this is what sparked it all. So let's get into Miss Cleo fucking Patra. All right. In order to do so, we got to talk about and close it out here. Not close it out, but close out the kingdoms here with 322 BCE. A guy by the name of Alexander the Great pulls up, shuts shit down. You know, he says, "Hey, I want it. It's mine. I run this shit." Before Alexander and the Romans, there are a couple things I'm gonna mention. So like I say, 15th century, in between Middle and the New Kingdom, you got the Eastern Asians starting to run Egypt as a nation. You know, after the New Kingdom ended, you had the Libyans and who was it? I forget who else. Basically barking at you. You know what I'm saying? The Nubians and Persians. The Nubians, you got the Persians and the Libyans, like I said, right? Coming at you. King Pi. King Pi was a Nubian born king who rose and ended up reigning over Egypt as a nation during that time after the New Kingdom, or during, like I say, do your research there. Look up King Pi. I think it's important to mention him because everything that I've seen does describe him as a notably dark, black man to have ruled Egypt. Everything else just talks about the pharaohs, you know what I mean, and their reign. And of course, we know that these were melanated people. But again, I think there's a lot that you could uncover once you get into King Pi. I just want to take this time to kind of dive into Cleopatra, right? So, before Alexander the Great, Egypt's being ran by the Persians. Alexander pulls up, and you would think that Egypt wants to get back to themselves, right? But the Persians had ruled over Egypt before. They were forced out of Egypt, and when they took reign again, they started implementing. They feared losing it, so they didn't want to give up control. So they started implementing, strict rules, killing people, locking people up. If you were congregating too many people in a crowd, you going to jail. So when the Romans came and took over Egypt, they were actually thankful, in a sense. Another reason that they appreciated Alexander the Great and they named him a pharaoh of Egypt and bought into the Roman Empire with little to no pushback and backlash was he gave respect to their culture. We all know King Tut, but before King Tut, there's another pharaoh that doesn't get talked about much. He was actually written out of history during the time, at least. Akhenaten. So again, his Egypt being such a religion-based nation, religious-based people, they held that near and dear to them. They were not accepting change, right? Akhenaten at his time of leadership said, "We're gonna abandon all the old gods and only acknowledge one God, and that's the Son. The only God that we will worship is the Son. And I want to say for about 17 years he reigned. And during his time, that was it. It was only one God. King Tut was his predecessor, if I'm not mistaken, or his successor rather. And as soon as he got into office, even as a young boy, I'm sure with heavy coaching in his ear, he changed everything back to the old gods. So that's just something important to mention, right? So when Alexander the Great came and took over Egypt from the Persians, twitching, that's a good point. What do they call Jesus, Son of God? That's where the concept of Star Wars came from. That's why he went and got James Earl Jones. He said, I can't show America you black. But we know. We know. All right. So, all right. Alexander the Great takes over. He starts paying respect to their memorials for the gods, right? He's following their religious traditions, not their religion, but their traditions, to show that he can be a understanding ruler, right? Doctor says Star Wars was modeled after Vietnam War and some Akira Kurosawa movies. That makes sense. I never thought about it like that. And I love Star Wars. I was talking about it recently. We're gonna divert for a second. I was talking about it recently that growing up, I thought that I owned the VHSs. That turned out not to be true. You know how that goes when you're a child and somebody else paid for it. But during that time, man, I used to watch Star Wars like every month. You know what I mean? And I'm talking the trilogy, early 90s. After that shit, after it was like, oh nah, this ain't yours, but you can watch them. I was like, oh, fuck you and Star Wars, nigga. You know how that goes. All right, so Alexander establishes the city Alexandria, right? Metropolis. People love it there. Everything's good, beautiful. People have no reason to complain. Let's see. I forget how he died. Yeah, so they don't really say. I mean, it's just a lot of speculation, basically. A lot of speculation between the date, man, apparently the location. But he died in Babylon. between the evening of the 10th of June and the 11th of June. Macedonians and local residents wept the news, while Achaemenid subjects were forced to shave their heads. The mother of Darius III, Sisigambis, having learned of Alexander's death, became depressed and killed herself later. During that time, during ancient Egypt's reign, it was a custom for women during death at funerals and such to scratch themselves, punch themselves, essentially injure themselves as a way of showing grief. Reversible King, what's good, man? Appreciate you tapping in. Yeah, we in RAOP studies, history, Friday's history lesson. Think about that today. You pass. You watching down from heaven, and you like, man, my girl ain't punch herself hard enough. That scratch ain't hurt. She ain't love me for real. She just tell me she do. All right. So Alexander was essentially like widely accepted into Egypt. The interesting thing about his acceptance was when he passed, his rulership, like his, I don't know what the right word would have been, but his regions were spread out across his 7 generals, right? So Egypt becomes Ptolemy's prize, right? He's gifted Egypt. But in doing so, Ptolemy is a incestual motherfucker. Like, from this point to the end of ancient Egypt, if Amp was here, he would be on his Tariq Nasheed. Of course, they welcome the Greeks, Africans. That's funny. I did find that interesting. Because from everything that I've gathered, my takeaway was that under the Roman rulership or rule of Egypt, there wasn't much complaint. There wasn't much pushback. You don't see stories of Egyptians trying to overthrow. Now, what ended up happening was when Alexander the Great took over, like I say, he adapted some of their cultures by going to the shrines, going to the memorials, and paying respect to the gods, following certain traditions, right? To the people, in turn, starting to accept Greek culture and Roman culture. And when I say Greek culture, enters Ptolemy. Now, Ptolemy and Alexander the Great were like really good friends. I don't want to say best friends. Who knows if they grew up playing ball together? You know what I'm saying? Dot said, all jokes aside, there's a reason why the whites took over so easily from Hawaii to the Incas. They worshiped the whites once they landed. Dr. said, thinking their gods were light skinned. And that's correct. That is correct. It mentioned that. So another interesting thing about Egypt and Rome or Greece during that time was, one, how much they were influenced by Egypt's mythology, um, but also the architecture. So the flute columns that Greece was known for, or made Roman buildings look so regal, predated to Egypt. Egypt gets some credit for things that was not indigenous to Egypt. So early vases or early vase and early baskets, some of the materials that were used, and I can't tell you exactly where they were sourced or how they were sourced for that matter, right? But what I can say is, some of the baskets, the early baskets that were used had palm trees, and that wasn't indigenous to that Nile River area, or even Fayoum, where a lot of, like I say, agricultural developments began during that time. So, where was I? All right, so the Egyptians now were accepting this Greek language, right? They're transcribing everything over into Greek. That's how the Rosetta Stone was actually able to be deciphered. That's how we are able to read hieroglyphics today. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a French professor in the 1800s that deciphered the Rosetta Stone. I don't know his name to give him credit, but shout out to you, big dog.
Whoop de doo.
So, like I say, they're following this. This is how we start to lose a lot of Egyptian history too, because during this time there are no more hieroglyphics written. Correct me if I'm saying it wrong. No more of that. Now we're getting the Greek language. Another interesting fact: Egypt is credited for creating paper, oftentimes, that came from Asia. I want to say, I'm not even going to get into where in Asia, but that came from Asia, right? But one thing that Egypt did do was, how could I say this? They taught essentially to use a pen to write to paper, and that once you write to paper, that letter should be able to be sent, right? So they created the mail system as we know it today. There's a certain individual in the chat that can attest to that. He can thank the Egyptians one time. Dr. said you're not lying, which is funny because Africans talked down on us about our history and most of theirs was lost. Stop using written language. Yep. So that's another reason why I think that we're not taught a lot about African history. Just my deep dive into Egypt alone made me realize this. That nation was, so the pre-dynastic period, if I'm not mistaken, was another 5,000 years before the 3,000, right? And all of this is before Jesus Christ was said to walk earth, right? So you got pyramid, you have like so much development in this time, so much to take pride in. But because of how you have to get to leadership, like how you have to become a pharaoh, ruler, right? How you have to maintain, how you have to make a name, we end up losing everything. So jealousy, envy, in the sense of I don't want you bigger than me, so I gotta erect a bigger statue, and I'm gonna knock yours down so people forget about it. I don't want it mentioned in the same sentence. Crazy to think. There should have been so much more pride in everything that came before us. Another, we're gonna get to this down the road, but there's a huge point that I want to talk about as far as respecting history, right? All right, so matter of fact, it was with Ptolemy. How did Ptolemy die? Okay, no, it wasn't Ptolemy. It wasn't Ptolemy. All right, let's continue. So, like I say, all right, my bad. Got distracted there. Alexander the Great's ruling, doing an amazing job. Everything's going smooth. He dies. He got 7 generals. He passing out space like, yo, you get this, you get this, you get this. Ptolemy ends up with Egypt. We go years and years through till we get Cleopatra, born in the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt from 51 to 30 BC, and the last active Hellenistic pharaoh, meaning she was the last pharaoh, not just queen, not just, you know what I mean, regent of ancient history, period. All right, born in Alexandria, Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy the 12th Auletes, however you say it. One of them gotta be right. Who named her his heir before his death in 51 BC. Now, she began her reign alongside Ptolemy the 13th. But they fell out and ensued civil war. During this time, this is where shit gets interesting. During this time, Pompey is an amazing general. Like, he's known for shutting shit down. But he had just lost a war, the Battle of Pharsalus. And he was looking for refuge. He wanted to go to Egypt, but he lost this war specifically to Julius Caesar. And this is in Julius Caesar's Civil War, right? I'm sure you've at least heard of it if you know anything about Roman history. You've at least, because Julius Caesar, infamous, right? Now, by this point, you got to think Cleopatra is at minimum, let's just say 18 for our comfort level sake. During this time, age didn't exist. For all we know, she could have been 14, 15, whatever, right? But actually, it says she was born when? And I'm only saying that to say you're young and you're having to deal with these type of decisions and these type of things so early on, right? You're sharing leadership with your brother. You and him, of course, as siblings do, come to a head and it's like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? Gotta note that she had a good relationship with Pompey and had no reason not to fuck with him, right? She also fucked with Julius Caesar, as Dr. Ogden mentioned earlier. And the thing with that was she gave up the nookie. Cleopatra gave up that punani to Julius Caesar several times. She liked it. She liked it raw. They had a son, Caesarion. We're going to talk about him in just a second. Now, before the son, I'm going to go back to Cleopatra. As Ptolemy's looking for refuge, she's looking to take sole reign over Egypt. She wants to beat her brother and rid herself essentially of his influence. She sides with Julius Caesar. And well, actually, she doesn't know how to play it, but things just kind of work out in her favor that she doesn't have to necessarily show her hand. Her brother was plotting the same. He wanted to take complete ownership, and he had some niggas in his ear, generals and shit that's like, yo, you should do this. You should kill Ptolemy, welcome him to Egypt as a friend. I mean, not Ptolemy, but Pompey. And the reason why this was such a climatic thing for all three parties involved, keep in mind, what was the brother's name? Ptolemy the 13th. So Ptolemy the 13th and Cleopatra are brothers and sister, right? Pompey had a great relationship with their father. Great relationship with their parents. They felt obligated to honor him by welcoming him. He expected to be welcomed. Like, yo, I known y'all since, man, whatever, since y'all was a dream, nigga. I've been fighting with your daddy in the battlefield type shit. Not just that, I've held it down. You got no reason not to welcome me. I know that I'm going through this, but I need this, right? If they accept him, that's a slap in the face to Julius Caesar. It is going to be taken as a sign of war against the Roman Empire, right? And at this time, Egypt is Egypt under the Roman influence. They're and this is through Ptolemy and but they are Egypt, right? This was to bridge and build relations. Keep in mind the times. So the brother Ptolemy the 13th, he decides, with the influence of his generals, with the influence of his advisors and such, he decides that instead of welcoming Pompey, he's gonna pretend to and then kill him. Which, if you Genghis Khan, if you a ruthless ruler, if you a ruthless motherfucker, period, that's some cold shit. It's like, oh damn, I know I can't trust you, but you did what you had to do to gain my allegiance, type shit, right? That's what he was thinking when he did that, and it did not work like that. Julius Caesar had just defeated Pompey, but still had a lot of respect for him. He still thought, yo, this a real nigga. He stood it out with me. Though he lost, he wasn't supposed to die like this. He truly felt that way. And he ordered the generals and the advisors that were in Ptolemy the 13th's ear, he ordered them to death. So that's some real nigga shit. Shout out to Julius Caesar for that. All right. Now, like I say, those two have a relationship. They have a son. At this time, she's living in Rome. And things become tumultuous for Julius Caesar himself. Niggas in an uproar. We talking a coup. And they kill that motherfucker, right? So she's fearful. You would think that he named his son the heir of the Roman Empire. He did not. He named his nephew Octavius. Now, the thing with Octavius, I think Octavius was ambitious, right? I think Octavius wanted Egypt because he felt like, hey, we've had it during my lifespan or even before type shit. He probably just felt like it should have, you know what I mean? And because of Cleopatra, he felt away. He had just reason. So Julius Caesar dies. Cleopatra leaves Rome, goes back to the city of Alexandria. That's where she was living before she shacked up with Julius Caesar, right? So she's fearful that Octavius is going to kill her and her son, Caesarion, because he's not the heir, but he might feel that way and try to claim ownership type shit, yada yada, right? Well, little did we know a few years prior to Julius Caesar dying, Mark Antony, who was not only a good friend, but a general of Julius Caesar, writes to Cleopatra. And he says, you know, hey, let's schedule a meeting. Meet me here. Who knows what happened during that meeting? But he fell in love immediately. Immediately. Out the gate. Years go by. Julius Caesar dies. She's on the run. Mark Antony comes to her rescue and says, "Fear not, for I am here." That's how I imagine they talked back then. In Greek. So they have a child, right? But Octavius decides, hey, I want you to marry my sister. Fuck with her for real. And he does. He kills the fling with Cleopatra, left that shit alone. Mark Antony is now married to Octavius's sister, Octavia, or something like that. It was very close, right? Because Cleopatra had that wet. Cleopatra had, that pussy had to been good. Dad said she must have had the Nile River. She must have had a whole ocean in that thing. Because let me tell you, Julius Caesar dies. My dog puts it all on the line and says, hey, now that he's out the way, let me fuck with you. Wisens up when Octavius says, marry my sister. And then the boy loses every bit of sense after having twins. I want to say he had 3 kids with Octavius' sister. For the sake of this, I'm gonna call her Octavia. Now, let's say they have 3 kids. I know at least a set of twins. That boy say, oh nah, I'm up out of here. We done. Watch how I disappear. Magic. Have you ever heard of that? Back with Cleopatra. Back with Cleopatra. Now, because of this, Octavius is pissed. This nigga like, oh, fuck no. This shit, what? This ain't how it's going down. We ride at dawn. They saddle up. They're chasing Mark Antony and Cleopatra and Caesarion out of everywhere. They end up killing Caesarion. Then Mark Antony loses a war. That could have happened before Caesarion dies, but just no Caesarion dies, right? Mark Antony loses a war and they have to separate. in their separation, as Cleopatra is running, she runs into trouble. Mark Antony gets word that his baby done died. Cleopatra gone, dog. She up out of there. What you gonna do? That boy take his own sword. And because we did Japanese culture last week, he tried to commit seppuku. I believe that's how you say it. When they like do suicide, self-suicide. He wounds his chest with the knife. But whatever he did, whatever strike he did, it wasn't deep enough to kill him instantly. So he's bleeding out. And he has to like live now, right? Like shit didn't just stop in any way. He goes on to find, like he meets up with Cleopatra. They reunite as he's dying, wound to the chest. By this point, he's lost way too much blood. It's clear Mark Antony's out of there. He's about to go. And I keep in mind, all of this is going on while Cleopatra is still the reigning pharaoh of Egypt. Mark Antony is staring her in her eyes and he says, do me this favor. Kill me and, return me to Octavius and like ask him to spare you, right? Because Octavius had threw her a bone. That nigga told her, hey, I'll forgive you if you kill your husband for me. He was so mad that Mark Antony had the audacity to leave his sister and then go back to Cleopatra. And he say, hey, if you kill him, all is forgotten. She couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. So after he dies, essentially she dies, I want to say they caught her, right? So Mark Antony ended up catching her. I mean, not Mark Antony, but Octavius. They end up capturing Cleopatra, and at this point, she is trying to survive herself. But she can't live without Mark Antony. She lost her son. She has to live under this dictator, right? So she tries to commit suicide twice. Octavius is, I guess, torturing her by keeping her alive. And he's like, yo, nah, I'm going to make sure that you don't die now. So he keeps eyes on her. He's like, yo, I'm watching you morning, noon, and night. Whatever you do, we got eyes on you. They don't know how she died, whether it was poison or a snake bite, but they do say she committed suicide to rid herself of, essentially her slavery. And after that, the Romans took it up, and then Macedonia falls, and it goes back, history changes at that point. But I say it all to say today's history lesson, that was the fall. Once Cleopatra lost her reign, that's the end of our ancient history. Our ancient Egypt history. She was the last Hellenistic pharaoh. Let's see what happened to Egypt. It was absorbed by the Roman Empire, like we mentioned, as a province, and lost its independence. It was no longer ruled by a pharaoh or a native dynasty. Instead, Rome governed Egypt directly, primarily for its strategic importance and as a major source of grain. And then once Rome fell, free for all until the people grabbed it back up. But crazy, crazy history, man. Just because you were king too doesn't mean you had it good. That's one thing that I learned throughout this study here. Doctor said, no, it's interesting too. When Napoleon went into Egypt, they are the reason we know a lot of the history. I'm assuming it got cut off there. They are the reason we know a lot of the hieroglyphics and history was translated with Rosetta Stone. Yep. Let's look at that. Now, they were saying that Napoleon was running around knocking noses off of the Sphinx, but that's not true. I don't know that he didn't do it, but there are depictions of the Sphinx without its nose, predating Napoleon. Now, I hate to use talking points that you would see just so commonly, but as soon as you dive into this, almost every video is gonna say Cleopatra is closer to us or closer to the invention of the iPhone than she is to the invention of the pyramid. It's true, but still. I say that to say 1798, right? It feels like this invasions, the French invasion of Egypt and Syria, 1798 to 1801. It feels like this date is so long ago, right? With the right history, this is easy to trace to a matter of generations. And it's crazy. Like this is why I wanted to do the history lessons, man, because there's so much history in such short spans, right? Like I mentioned, I want to say it was like 1726 to or 17 something to 16 something, let's just say, to where all the pharaohs had a less than 5-year reign. Almost a century of pharaohs that so you think that's 20 different pharaohs, right? They was running around like a democratic republic. I think I said that wrong, but that doctor said he was quoted saying he had visions of riding into the east on an elephant with a turban holding a Quran. He didn't believe in God, but also said religion is needed to keep the people peaceful. That's an interesting fact. All right, let's read some of this. All right, this was a military expedition led by Napoleon during the French Revolutionary Wars. Campaign aimed to undermine the British trade routes, expand French influence, and establish a scientific and administrative presence in Egypt. Napoleon also sought to sever Britain's connection to its colonial holdings in India with the long-term ambition of challenging British dominance in the region. Departing from Toulon in May 1798, Napoleon's fleet, comprising of 36,000 troops, landed in Alexandria on June 28th, advancing rapidly. He defeated the ruling Mamluks at the Battle of the Pyramids, securing control of Cairo and establishing a French administration. The campaign, however, was soon compromised by the destruction of the French fleet at Abukir Bay by Horatio Nelson, which cut off French reinforcement and supplies. French rule faced resistance, including Cairo uprising in 1798, which was suppressed with significant casualties. Seeking to consolidate French gains, Napoleon advanced into Ottoman Syria, aiming to preempt an Ottoman counteroffensive, but his campaign ended in failure at the Siege of Acre, where Anglo-Ottoman forces supported by the Royal Navy repelled French assaults. Real quick, I think it's important for me to note that I can read, but I'm trying to read fast, and for the stream, you know what I mean? I feel retarded right now. But I'm going to pause right there. I forgot to mention something that I wanted to talk about. I mentioned it earlier where Egypt was known for copper, right? Or ancient Egypt. We're talking jewelry, tools, everything. Their weaponry was actually, the military was actually a reason why they kept losing wars and battles and shit. And the reason was Eastern Asia had the invention of steel, or the resources for steel. Egypt didn't have those resources to create anything stronger at that time. So, yeah, man, a lot of interesting history there, man. But I feel like this was a great episode of Friday's history lesson. Starting 3,000 years ago, you can't even begin to go through all of the pharaohs, right? But another thing to mention in that is, again, they etched out pharaohs. There's a scribe that has a listing in order of all the pharaohs, but some were, like I say, etched out. I don't think it was preserved well enough to even have a complete listing. I think it mentioned that at some point they forgot who was reigning, so they stopped. Another issue in African history, like with Ramses II, right? So we talked about him being notable for a lot of the obstructions. He wanted so many buildings that they couldn't keep up. It's hard to, think about building a 40-foot building at that time, a 40-foot structure at that time, whether it be a monument, a temple, library, a place for commerce. You know what I'm saying? No matter what you're building, it's gonna take time with the limited. And yeah, the tools were advanced. Still, only so much for manpower, only so much for help, ease. You know what I'm saying? To make things easier, rather. Um, so yeah, they couldn't keep up. Instead of erecting new buildings to try and keep up with the demand, they started scratching off names of monuments that were already erected in during previous dynasties and renaming them to Ramses. And that's just one example of some of what they used to do. You know, you had tomb robbers, right? And this is even before the conclusion of ancient Egypt. Um, so the priests at the time, what they would do, or what they had to do, at least in a number of cases, actually, they had to move the tombs. There's I saw a video. There's a tomb that had 50 of the pharaohs, at least 50 pharaohs buried inside. Another reason why I think it's important to try and search more into ancient Egypt is because we can't allow for the only depiction to come from Hollywood, nor you know what I'm saying? I think that you got to do your own research and learn a little bit about the history, because the way that Cleopatra is described and depicted differ from what we see. Um, King Tut is talked about as if he was a phenomenal pharaoh. If I'm not mistaken, he reigned for 17 years, right? But he died before he was 28. He started leading at 9. And that's just what they know. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's no telling what he accomplished according to his tutelage and his plan, not someone else's influence. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I'm saying that to say, finding out about Narmer. I don't know if it's Narmar or Narmer. There there are variations of how, you describe. I mean, you mention the name and such, but both you'll find information. Again though, you pre pre dynastic ancient Egypt is a group of communities just sprawled across the Nile River, right? When the resources dry up, you move, you migrate. As you move, you find, hey, this is a great space. Let me build around here, or let me, even if it's temporary, right? Once you find that life seems sustainable, they say, hey, we're going to build a community. We erect more standing structures. These can last the time, right? And then Think about it like your community. I'm sure everyone's had an experience to where it's like, yo, I don't want such and such from that neighborhood coming over here. That's what it would be like back then. You see a community up the street and you don't want them coming here to your community because you don't want them impacting your ways, right? Or taking from your small resources or whatever, right? So you got feuding, you have whatever. And King Narmer says, hey, I'm along the way, I'm gonna fight these battles. I'm gonna win this nation and unite us as one. When I do this, I declare myself the Pharaoh. I am the first king, right? And then, like I say, as you start to learn more about the history, that dynasty lasted until, if I'm not mistaken, the 10th dynasty. The first dynasty was Narmer to the 10th dynasty. So you can just ups and downs, but for the most part, things are flowing. Things are flowing according to your vision, right? Then you lose it all to a foreign nation. Everyone is up in a roar. There's so much history that you could unpack through this ancient Egypt deep dive. From some of the architects, some of the architectural additions, or what's a better word I could say? Contributions. There you go. Architectural contributions. Even down to the depictions. So one of the things with you ever notice that with the hieroglyphics, everyone's always face to the side, right? Let's just pull this picture up as an example. This was thought to be the best way to draw a person because it captured the best angle of every ligament. So your waist, your shoulders, your legs are all essentially flush forward, facing, you know what I'm saying? Forward facing, looking, at it would be at our perspective. They attest this to, or not attest, think cubism. How you're seeing the same image, different perspectives. So here, let's say the left side of your face is your good side type shit. You gonna turn to the left. That's the side that's gonna be your head, right? But essentially, your arms and all of that was just put in a way to show that this is how God sees you. A perfect silhouette with your touch. I think that's dope because if everyone drew like that, you know what I'm saying? That would be cold. Even when you get into when you think about what's her name? Cleopatra. Think about just some of what we went over, right? You fucking with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony at the same time. At the same damn time. They supposed to be boys. Mark Anthony behind his back. That boy studied in back dope. That boy studied the back dope ology. Wrote Cleopatra a letter and said, hey, come meet with me. Meet with me here. She was already getting her back blowed out, but she was a queen. She was a queen. She
Don't
was
get in
a
the way of my
queen. Right?
She's your queen to be, a queen to be forever, a queen who'll do whatever His Highness desires. She's your queen to be, a vision of perfection, an object of affection to quench your royal fire, completely free from infection, to be used at your discretion, waiting only for your direction. Your queen to be.
That's y'all queen, man. I had to take a pound cake break. I wanted to show y'all my slice, but I ate it too fast. It's that damn good. Perfectly crusted. Perfectly crusted. Now I ain't put the drizzle on top. But nonetheless. So, like I say, so much to unpack here in the ancient history. I saw someone said that we've only discovered 1% of ancient Egypt. And think of the 1% that we have discovered. Niggas still don't understand it. So we at what? With the inception of Egypt. I mean, not even. With the inception of the dynastic period, right? (3150) BC. So we looking at over 5,000 years of history right now, right? And in that, in 3,000 of it, you know, less than 10%. Matter of fact, in 5,000 years of history, you know, less than 5% of your history. Some of the books that were written that I saw, let's see. There was a a book that was basically a book of the dead. There you go. A collection of spells and prayers intended to help the deceased navigate the afterlife. This was like how you sacrifice your husband, how you sacrifice your loved ones to the god. You know what I'm saying? The story of Sinew, a narrative about a noble who flees Egypt and later returns, experience a journey of exile and redemption. That I'm not gonna get into it, but essentially this story is repeated in a degree, in a sense, in the Bible. The second son. The second son returns. Eber's Papyrus, a collection of ancient medical texts detailing remedies and treatments using herbs and other substances. Edwin Smith Papyrus. Now I know they wasn't running around calling this shit no Edwin Smith Papyrus. An important medical treatise focusing on surgical and anatomical knowledge, demonstrating the birth of medical science. Again, I'm fucked up about that name, man. I know they wasn't calling that shit no damn Edwin Smith. That must be the motherfucker that found it and broke it down or something. Yeah. Edwin Smith, who brought it in 1862 and the oldest known surgical treatise. Treatise. Like I say, I'm about retarded sometimes. Now, there's another fucked up part about history, especially when it comes to Black and African history specifically. He finds it, he pulls up and says, "Hey, man, I got this. Y'all should check it out. Oh, we love it. This is going to help move everything across. Let's name it after you, man. You wait. It's all right." Egyptian papyrus. Boom. No credit given. No harm done. Pyramid texts. Ancient religious spells inscribed in pyramids to help pharaohs ascend to the afterlife. I mean, we knew that, but I didn't know they wrote in the coffins. I mean, I guess I did know that. I did know that. Okay, so they had their own societal book of societal standards, let's just say. And we're not going to say that it worked or operated as the Bible, but think of it like your 10 commandments kind of thing from what I'm gathering. This was instruction of Taotep, a wisdom text that provides moral guidance on humility, justice, and living in harmony with society. This essentially would be do unto others. You know what I'm saying? It ain't like we talking about think and grow rich here. You know what I mean? Westcard Papyrus, a collection of fairy tales featuring magic and wonders from the court of the pharaoh Khufu. Amduat, a funerary text that describes the journey of the sun god who through the underworld during the night. Like this is interesting to think about, right? Because this is essentially a book of fairy tales, or let's not call them fairy tales. I feel like that would be disrespectful to their religion, honestly. I believe if they put it on paper, you know what I'm saying? And I ain't saying it like they ain't had no free time, but who etching this into this stone, digging slaves, and I mean digging pyramids as a slave, you know what I mean? Living as a slave and graffitiing buildings for the fuck of it. So while I do think there were tales that were told here, you know what I'm saying, and not in this particular one, while I think that there were tales that may have been told throughout some of these hieroglyphics, I still believe that the essence of it was always something rooted in a form of truth for them, right? So, when you see stories about references to the gods, for them, they truly, I mean, you see the sun a little closer one day, that bitch talking to you in this time. You know what I mean? 31 BC, 3100 BC. The moon. If I feel like I can jump and touch it that one night, all of a sudden, yo, the God spoke to me. I'm a firm believer. You know how they say he is I am he. He is in me, right? I'm a firm believer that your conscience works as God, right? And I say that because your conscience ain't steering you wrong. Your conscience ain't the one saying go do this and go do that. It's usually you talking yourself into whatever and your conscience calming that thought down, right? Correct me if I'm mistaken. But when I think about it like that, it helps me to say, he is I am he. If my conscience isn't steering me, then it becomes a conscious decision to avoid, you know what I'm saying, to listen or not listen. So again, I don't think that you would draw something like this just to tell a story when it seems like history didn't always mean so much. The historical importance. And I'm not how that's not what I meant. Let me say it like this. How could I say it? The importance of record keeping, right? But again, the truth was stretched. Look at this. Look at how long her arms are. The truth was stretched. So I don't know. Maybe they did, you know, do all of this and still have time for some stories. I mean, you drawing a man as a bird, so yeah, I guess you did have. Oh, this is the funerary literature. Passport to the Egyptian afterlife. Imagine you need this seal, and it's only one artist in your city that can draw you with the wings. Bro got a boo boo. Like he got diarrhea in this time 2 days before your funeral. Ooh. You better pray he don't die with you. The Nile dried up, he ain't getting no water. I did find out that the mummification of the bodies wasn't a necessary thing in any way. The desert itself was actually like really good for preserving bodies. They used salt to dry the bodies out. Man, the way that I couldn't imagine being a mortician in this time. So for those of y'all that don't know, I had a brief stint picking up bodies, you know, working for a funeral home and such, and you know, it's different, but I didn't have to do anything that was too gruesome, right? I mean, I just looked at it like I'm picking up a body, right? Um, for them though, they're removing the organs because obviously they don't want the body to rot. Why it mattered if you're sealing them away though didn't necessarily make sense to me, but I'll get to why I think in just a second. They removed all the organs from the body, didn't want it to rot. They removed the brain through the nose. And we know these things, but I just want you all to think about this. In order to do so, they had to break the nasal cavity, get up in there, turn the brain in the stew, and snatch it up out of there. I was like, God, hey, at that point, I would have been like, yo, we no longer offer this service. if you want your body preserved, do that at home and then bring it to me and I'll mummify it from there. But another important thing, not everyone was mummified. Obviously, all the kings, they could afford it. But it was actually really expensive. A lot of resin was used, fats, like the concoction to preserve the body was just excessive. Um, some of it was resin, fats, um, oil, and something else. I mean other things. It was black. It was black tar. They described it as, but um, why I think the removal of the organs, even though, like I say, you're putting them in tombs, you're putting them under um ground, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going through so many measures to where you would think these bodies are not going to be exhumed. This was how their history was set up, right? I think they did it because in the afterlife, that they thought so highly of the afterlife, or they had such a vision of the afterlife that they were afraid if your body rotted on earth, it would carry into the afterlife. So interesting thought there, I guess. Did you all know that in the pyramids, though the bodies were buried underground in the tombs deep below, the pyramids were actually used as a more of a think of it like an entertainment hall, right? But this is where you come to party with your ancestors. So we might be visiting the wrong way. It was said that they drank a lot of beer and wine and such inside of the pyramids, and they would use that as a way, you know, they'd sing songs and dance and such, but they use that as a way to connect and be with their ancestors. So there are a lot of there are a lot of historical contributions that we could look into. The mail system, pen to paper, that in itself, especially as someone that used to be nice with that pen to pad, you know what I mean? Yeah. Hieroglyphics. I mean, this is art before art, right? So yeah, if y'all got some time, man, do a deep dive, get into some of this. I wanted to tap in, let y'all know every week we are going deep into a different subject. I don't know what next week's subject is gonna be just yet. I'm actually hoping that I can tap in a guest for next week. I'll keep y'all posted on that, but I don't want to put my foot in my mouth announcing anything just yet. But I will work to provide you with another Friday history lesson that is more than worthwhile. And I hope this one was. My goal is to get better each time delivering these, delivering this little lesson, I guess. I'm gonna start streaming. Like I say, I had to take a week off to go be with my grandparents. Man, had to go help out down there. I'm back, so we about to stream every day, man. Yeah, like I say, next week it'll be much better. Every stream, I feel like I've gotten better. Every stream, I feel like I'm going to get better, of course, right? But thus far, it's only gotten better. So yeah, next one I'm really excited about. I was super excited about this one. I stayed up all night. I was watching hours and hours of videos on ancient Egyptian history. Yeah, man, I just want to provide y'all with a lot of good info. And eventually I'll expound on it, maybe start doing some more like social media content with it, a way to just like drop little known facts and keep people up to date and abreast throughout our journey with this. So I appreciate everybody tapping in, man. Y'all already know what to do. If you're not already, sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/RAO podcast. That way you can join in on all the fun that we have in the Discord. You can get bonus episodes, extra content, etc., etc. Make sure you tap into all the episodes and all of what we've been doing. If you're not already, man, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe on everything, whatever platform you're on. We appreciate the support. That's how it helps us to grow. Right now, we're working to get affiliated on Twitch. So if you're not following us, man, do us that favor. Go ahead and hit the follow on Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, anything like that, man, follow us there, of course, but help us to get our numbers up on Twitch. Like I said, we're just hoping to grow as a podcast, grow our studio, grow our space, grow our endeavors. You know what it is. Again, I can't thank y'all enough, man. It's always tough closing down because I do enjoy doing this. I do enjoy the feedback. I enjoy y'all tapping in. I can't thank y'all enough, but I gotta eat some of this goddamn pound cake, man. With all of that said, I am out of here.